Good morning, dear colleagues. We continue our panel sessions on the second day of the conference. As moderator, I am pleased to invite all our participants and guests to the panel, which is dedicated primarily to synagogue painting, as well as Jewish traditional art. And I'm very glad that we were able to gather such a wonderful group of researchers today for a panel and discussion. And it is a special honor for me to invite Professor Bracha Yaniv from Bar-Ilan University, Israel, to the presentation of her research. Professor Bracha Yaniv, Emerita, Department of Jewish Art, Bar-Ilan University. Professor Yaniv was among the founders and heads of the Department of Jewish Art. She established and was chief editor of Ars Judaica, the Bar-Ilan Journal for Jewish Art. Her research topics are ceremonial objects and synagogue interior design. Among her publications are the books, The Torah Case, Its History and Design in Hebrew, The Carved Wooden Torah Arks of Eastern Europe, finalist of the 2017 National Jewish Book Award, and Ceremonial Synagogue Textiles from Ashkenazi, Sephardi, and Italian communities, finalist of the 2019 National Jewish Book Award. Her current paper is based on her research of wall and ceiling paintings in the synagogues of Eastern Europe. The book, authored together with Tamara, who wrote on the inscriptions in those synagogues, will be published by Littman Library of Jewish Civilization. The topic of Professor Yaniv's talk is the paintings on the dome of the Smotrych Synagogue, Deciphering and Enigma. Dear Bracha, this floor is yours. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. I would like to start with my presentation. So I'm okay. Do you see it? Do you see my?
Not yet. Please try again.
To try again. Wow. Okay. Now it disappeared. Okay, I will open it again. So do you see it now? Wow.
No.
Bracha, please press share screen.
Yes, this is what I made. Now?
Yes, great.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to increase the slide. Now, the place where I have to pray, here I have it. Okay. Now you see it?
Yes, yes, very nice.
Okay.
Please.
Okay. In 1930, when the art historian Pavlo Zoltowski entered the wooden synagogue in the small Podolian town of Smotrych, he had no idea what an important contribution his visit would make to the research of Jewish art 100 years later. He took some photographs of the decorated walls and ceiling and made a few notes. As he did, at the other Podolian synagogues in the framework of the local field research conducted by the Kharkiv Museum of Ukrainian Art. Those photographs are today part of the Stefan Taranushenko collection at the Vernadsky National Library of Ukraine, Kyiv. Among those synagogues, which no longer exist, were also the synagogues of Mikhailivka, Minkivtsi, and Yaryshiv, similarly designed around the third quarter of the 18th century. Based on this collection, I will present the dome paintings of the Smotrych synagogue, its irregular composition, and its enigmatic iconography. The octagonal structure of the synagogue's dome is divided into 8 segments by painted undulating columns, creating 8 trapezoid fields. These contain 8 images presenting a mixture of animals, trees, musical instruments, and even 2 biblical scenes. Our discussion starts from the eastern segment, marked A, in front of us, which contains the tablets of the law with the crown above them and an open canopy surrounding it, echoing the Torah ark below. Flanking the eastern segment are 2 unusual images. The one on the right, segment B, includes a 2-horned ram confronting a unicorn whose body turns left, but his big horn is directed against the ram. In front of this confrontation scene are 2 trees. From the one on the right, a small branch sprouts to the right. Above the trees are 4 arms holding various ritual items: a citron, a trog, a palm frond lulav, a shofar, and a trumpet. The left segment, segment H, bears a similar depiction, but with 2 differences. Here, there are 3 trees, of which the central one sprouts a branch to the right. The other difference lies in the identity and position of the animals behind the trees. Here we have a unicorn and a lion turning their heads towards each other, but walking away towards the outer edge of the image. Although we know images of animal combats from the Ruthenian synagogues of Chodoriv and Gwoździec, Gwoździec in Polish, it is easier for me to say it in Polish, they differ from the Smotrych combat as their motif concisely express a sense of fear and distress, while the Smotrych animal confrontation presents a complex of varied motifs interlaced with each other. Our search for a source in traditional Jewish literature led us to a few biblical sources for these images. The starting point for our interpretation is found in the book of Daniel. Daniel, in Daniel's vision about the end of days. His vision, declared in chapter 8, reveals the great wars which will precede the end of days. One of the fierce forces in these wars is visualized metaphorically by a great two-horned ram, which is described in the following words. No beast could withstand him, and there was none to deliver from his power. Such a ram is depicted in the right side of segment B. And here are his corns. It is portrayed with its body arched forwards, about to attack a unicorn on the left. The unicorn represents the he-goat in Daniel's vision. It came from the west. The goat had a conspicuous horn on its forehead. Here we can see it. He struck the ram and broke his two horns. The furious he-goat not only killed the ram, but also destroyed the earth and heaven. It vaunted itself against the very chief of the host. On its account, the regular offering was suspended, and his holy place was abandoned. This battle is deciphered further in Daniel's vision as the last war to be waged at the end of days. The ram symbolizes the Medo-Persian Empire, and the he-goat, Greece, which persecuted the people of Israel and destroyed the temple cult. But at the end of days, a stronger king, God himself, will arise and overcome it. This predicted period, when God will reign over the universe, is presented in segment H. Here, the unicorn and the lion are not confronting one another, but as noted, walk away from and calmly turn their heads to each other in a peaceful manner. Furthermore, a closer look reveals, however, that the central tree has sprouted a branch from its stump to the right, which is a metaphorical reference to Messiah, son of David, according to the prophecy of Isaiah. But a shoot shall grow out of the stump of Jesse. A twig shall sprout from his stalk. This prophecy is further phrased in the book of Ezekiel. The word of the Lord came to me, and you, O mortal, take a tree and write on it, of Judah and the Israelites associated with him, and take another tree and write on it, of Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and all the house of Israel associated with him. So according to this prophecy, we have now two trees associated with the two groups of the dispersed tribes of Israel. And the prophecy continues. Bring them closer to each other so that they become one tree, joined together in your hand. And when any of your people ask you, won't you tell us what this action of yours means? Answer them. Thus said the Lord God, I am going to take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and of the tribes of Israel associated with him, and I will place the tree of Judah upon it, and make them into one tree, they shall be joined in my hand. And this is exactly what we see now in segment D. This prophecy continues with words of comfort promised by God. Oops. This prophet, I'm going to take the Israelite people from among the nations they have gone to, and gather them from every quarter, and bring them to their own land. I will make them a single nation in the land, on the hills of Israel, and one king shall be king of them all. Never again shall they be two nations, and never again shall they be divided into two kingdoms. No doubt, this further time, in the days to come, will also bring deliverance of the individual. This period is visualized on our left by a wild ox crouching beneath the unified tree, and the Leviathan in the nearly segment marked E. The wild ox and the Leviathan are both well known in Jewish culture as the reward awaiting the righteous in the world to come. An ancient expression of this motif can be seen on our right in the mosaic pavement of the Hammam Leaf Synagogue, Tunisia, of the 6th century. Here, individual deliverance is accompanied by the image of the Garden of Eden, marked by two peacocks standing on the fountain of life, a well-known motif since the ancient period. And here is the wild ox, the Leviathan, and the fountain with the peacocks. Returning to the metaphor of the final redemption, this is complemented above the trees with the depiction of the trumpets and a horn held by two arms protruding from one side, and the four species extended by two arms from the other side. These two elements point to the eschatological time when the temple will be rebuilt and its right renewed. The four species presented in both segments B and H are the ritual accessories of Sukkot, the Feast of Booths, as a symbol of the festival. The four species turn into a metaphor for the victory of God over the enemies of Israel in his war against them, as envisioned by the prophet Zechariah. All who survive of all those nations that came up against Jerusalem shall make a pilgrimage year by year to bow low to the King, Lord of hosts, and to observe the Feast of Booths. On the basis of this consoling and encouraging prophecy, the four species were frequently depicted on Jewish artifacts of the 3rd to 6th centuries, as seen on our right, in the mosaic pavement at the Hammam Tiberias Synagogue. In this case, those eschatological motifs of the ancient period include the horn alone, alluding to the words of Isaiah. And in that day, a great ram's horn shall be sounded, and the strayed who are in the land of Assyria and the expelled who are in the land of Egypt shall come and worship the Lord on the holy mount in Jerusalem. The Smotrych artist went one step further and included a horn and a trumpet, alluding to the messianic times when the temple will be rebuilt and its ritual reinstated, and the Lord will be praised in the temple, as proclaimed in the book of Psalms. Not yet. With trumpets and the blast of the horn, raise a shout before the Lord, the King, or in Hebrew, בחצוצות וקול שופר, הריעו לפני המלך. One more subject linked to the temple is the ancient custom of offering the first fruits to the priests during the feast of Pentecost. In accordance, a basket with fruits is presented in segment C, located above a peacock, which, as earlier noted, is a metaphor of the Garden of Eden. The comparison of the Smotrych paintings to those of the Ruthenian early 18th century synagogues mentioned earlier marks a chronological change from fear and distress as at Chodoriv and Vidzietz toward the more optimistic messianic motif of the later Smotrych painting. This difference might have resulted from the earlier period of the Chodoriv and the Vidzietz synagogues, when the harsh Chmielnitsky's persecutions were still in mind. As I would like to finish my paper in an optimistic mood, we should look at the two additional paintings of the Smotrych synagogue. Segment F presents the temptation in the Garden of Eden. Of course, without human figures, but you can see just one hand with the apple. And segment G portrays the spies returning from the land of Israel with a cluster of grapes. The spies are, of course, presented by the figures of two bears. These two biblical subjects mark a penetration of new subjects into the visual atmosphere of the East European synagogues during the second half of the 18th century. Thus, the Smotrych painting expresses a recovery and the step towards peaceful subjects such as local country landscape, daily surrounding folklore, various narrative subjects, and biblical themes. All these are found in the other synagogues that once existed on the current territory of Ukraine. And about them, you are invited to read in the forthcoming book, painted words and images in the synagogues of Eastern and Central Europe. Thank you very much. Stop
dear
sharing.
Bracha, yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
Just a minute.
yeah. Dear Bracha, thank you very much for your fascinating presentation, and we look forward to your book on synagogue paintings. Thank you. Dear colleagues, let us open the session for questions and comments after all four presentations. It's my proposition. And so I want to invite our second speaker, Dr. Tamara Kutsaieva, National Museum, the Fortress of Kyiv, Ukraine. Some words about Pani Tamara. Dr. Tamara Kutsaieva has been studying Judaica in collections of Kyiv museums since 2017. She participated in attribution of the full Judaica collection in the main historical museum of Ukraine, the National Museum of History of Ukraine. In 2023, she participated in digitalization of the fund of the prominent Ukrainian anthropologist Khvedir Vovk in the Institute of Archaeology of the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine. Thus, she has started to study the little-known topic Judaica in the scientific heritage of Khvedir Vovk. Her presentation, Wall Paintings of the Wooden Synagogue in the Norynsk-Village, is dedicated to the first results of these studies. Dear Tamara, this floor is yours. You're welcome. Please.
Dear participants of the conference, first of all, good morning, and do you hear me? Do you see me? As it could be some technical problems with internet. So, do you see me? Do you hear me? Yes, okay, so, and I'm glad to see all of you. I'm really happy that I have internet, and I will try to switch on my presentation to start our conversation. So I'm trying to do this, share. And do you see my presentation?
Yes, yes,
So,
of course.
okay,
Yes.
it's really great. And today, as Professor Kotlyar said, thank you very much.
I'm sorry, Tamara, not for full screen.
Not for full. So, again, oh, sorry. But I switch on the full screen and let's try again. And is it okay now?
No.
It's still the part of my presentation.
Slide demonstration, please.
A slide demonstration.
You have to click on the slideshow.
Focus slide.
Focus slide. Yes, I have switched it on. But Vitaly, could you switch on my presentation from your laptop? Okay, I will try to do this again at all. I close. Okay, I close it and I switch it again.
Yes, Tamara, please try again.
Yes, I will try to do this. And what I'm doing now. And does it work?
The same.
No, the same. I'm sorry, because I see the full screen and you see only the part of it. Sorry, maybe we will stay as it is.
But it's very little.
Надю, що ми можемо тут зробити?
Да.
Вона поширила, ти хто завантажив?
Так, я увімкнула свій, поширити повний показ слайдів, але я розумію, що
Ми
ви
нічого не
бачите.
бачимо. Там треба просто показ слайдів, і вони треба на кнопочку натиснути.
Я
Показ слайдів.
натиснула показ слайдів повний, але
Там видно було курсор.
Ми не бачимо курсору на цьому показ слайдів. Ні, це не має значення. Це просто там, де
А ось
вас
так.
вгорі червоне поле, там треба.
Так. Your
Да,
screen sharing.
Ліворуч трішки. Ліворуч показ слайдів.
Так.
Зараз
Ні
ваш
ж.
курсор там, де рецензування. Треба перевести на показ слайдів. Що, не вдається, ні?
Ні, не
Я зараз
вдається
спробую
так.
завантажити.
Ну, тоді хоча б можете натиснути там, де праворуч така стрілочка показується. Вона просто прибере оці зайві інструменти над бігунком.
Це
Давайте я
нас
спробую
тут.
завантажити зараз.
Вибачте, пане
Ви-
професор, я просто
ще
не
трішки-
розумію, що з цим робити.
Трішки вище курсор, дивіться, і праворуч над бігунком у вас є така стрілочка,
Я
яка
спробую
вверх
завантажити.
іде. Просто
Так.
на неї можна натиснути вище. Оце.
Надю,
Да, вище
якщо я
ще.
завантажую, що я
Да,
маю зробити?
оце. О, ну, хоча б трішки буде
Ні,
більше.
давайте я завантажу. Що я маю
Так,
зробити?
Віталію, я буду вам надзвичайно
показую екран?
вдячна.
Добре,
А,
хай воно закриє.
У
Да,
мене є скинути
Хай
презентацію.
закриє. Скажіть.
да, я закриваю.
Да.
Dear participants of the conference, I'm really sorry for these technical problems. Sorry.
Tamara, I'm trying to help you. Just give me a second.
Yes, of course, many thanks.
Слухай. У вас є чи мені перекинути?
Yeah. Але ж де Тамара?
Саме верхня.
Верхня.
Today, да, today 1.
Угу.
Це показ екрану? А чого так довго
Так, я бачу ваш екран, Віталій.
Що я маю зробити? Ось.
Треба вийти ще раз. Розбереження подіяти, з помощью студенту знати. Oh, it's okay.
It's
It's
absolutely
okay.
great.
Yes.
Yes, it's
Yes.
absolutely great, Vitaly.
This is
I
Tamara.
appreciate you for help and let me to start finally. Today I am inviting you to have, I think, an interesting trip to the northern part of Ukraine, to Житомирська область, historical area Volyn, to the village of Norynsk or Norynsk. And the next slide, please. My today presentation combines artistic and historical study, as there is very few information about Norynsk, its Jewish community and its synagogue at all. I will try to present sources of the research, some history of Jewish community that should combine should be combined with the story about wall paintings of the wooden synagogue of Norynsk and its symbolism. And the short history of Jewish community of Norynsk will explain why this community had exactly a wooden synagogue. And I ask the next slide. So, and some words about sources of this research, that it is very interesting. As Professor Kotlyar said, last year I participated in the digitalization of the archive of very prominent Ukrainian anthropologist Fedor Vovk here in Kyiv, and in among his papers I worked with photo documents that were called ethnography Jewish schools. These documents, these photos were attributed by specialists of the Institute of the Archaeology in the middle of the 20th century, and I think that they called the building of the synagogue and all pictures that were in that envelope like a school, because they just do not have additional information, not because of they had very low expertise or something like this, as these archaeologists and workers of archive had to work with a very great massive on information. And to the left you can see, you can familiarize with Professor Fedor Vovk, and I would like to say that this Judaica archive of Professor Fedor Vovk, as there is about 100 different pictures in his archive that could be connected with Judaica. Mostly there are pictures of people, types, some buildings, etc. And I think that this archive is one of the earliest archives of Judaica that today could be called archive Judaica at all, because Fedor Vovk died in 1918, and of course he took part in his scientific trips around Ukraine and Europe before the First World War. So this Judaica archive was formed long before Zholtovsky or Taranushenko started to travel around Ukraine, collecting their great and famous archives. And I ask the next slide, please. Yes, so here you can see one of the main pictures of this small story about Norynsk-Village, the outside image of the wooden synagogue in Norynsk. And according to additional sources, Fedor Vovk and some of his colleagues took part in the scientific excursion to Zhytomyrska Oblast, exactly to Norynsk, in 1909. And here you can see some words from memories about this trip of some of his colleagues. They had a photographer who accompanied them, and this photographer made a lot of very different pictures of very different objects in small towns of Volyn to collect, first of all, ethnography information. And this picture is very, very interesting, as we can see not only the structure of the wooden synagogue, but we can see a lot of people at the entrance to it. So I think they were invited in purpose, and also it is very, very interesting to try to understand who these people were and what was their destiny. But as still I do not have additional sources for my research, I just can say that there is a very important resource for next study. And now I ask you the next slide. Vitaly, next slide, please.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh my, it doesn't work. Now?
Not yet.
Not yet.
So, and while Vitaly is trying to change slides,
This one?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And here I would like just to show you pictures that were in the archive of Fedor Vovk, and later I will tell you more about them. So here you can see pictures of two walls in the synagogue. And Vitaly, I ask you the next slide. We will return to them later. Yes, and also here you can see one more picture of the wall painting in the synagogue, and to the right you can see an oil gas lamp that was on the wall of this wooden synagogue. And now I ask you the next slide. So I would like to repeat again that I think that these pictures in the archive of Fedor Vovk, who died in 1918, is one of the earliest archives of Judaica in Ukraine that were formed at all, because Taranushenko, Zholtovsky, or Danila Shcherbakivsky, famous Kyiv museologists, started to work after the First World War and even long after this period. And of course, among additional sources are used absolutely great Judaica archives of Stefan Taranushenko and Pavlo Zholtovsky that now are in Vernadsky National Library. And here we can see another view of the synagogue in Norynsk, and to the right there is just a street in this, not in the city, but in this village. We can see that this was really a village, not very big, with not very wide population, and most buildings, or even all buildings, were made of wood. And again, why the archive of Fedor Vovk is so important? Because in the archive of Taranushenko and Zholtovsky, we can see this synagogue only from outside. And leaving this slide, I would like to show you or to familiarize you with Stefan Taranushenko. His picture is to the right. He is sitting at the table in Kharkiv during his work, and to the left is the picture of Pavlo Zholtovsky. Okay, next slide, please. Yes, and some words about the history of Norynsk and its Jewish community. Here you can see a part of very famous ancient, not ancient, but Middle Times map of Ukraine, created by Baplan in the middle of the 17th century. And you can see that this village, as the whole region, moved between different states for centuries, from the Great Duchy of Lithuania to the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, then to the Russian Empire, then to the Ukrainian People's Republic, then to the Soviet Ukraine, and since 1991, Norynsk is in the frame of the independent Ukraine. And today Norynsk is a very, very small, mostly Ukrainian town that really lost its memory, not only about Jewish community, but also about its multicultural history at all. And it is also the point for next researches. And now I ask you the next slide, Vitaly, please. Some interesting facts about the Jewish community. The Jewish community started to form in the middle of the 17th century. And you can see that till the end of the 19th century, there was one or even two synagogues. But I have found information only about one synagogue. That is the object of my study today. And according to Professor Kotlyar, wooden synagogues were built by communities that recently settled in the area or lived in the poorest towns very far away from cultural centers. So here we can get a lot of information that this community, as the village at all, were rather poor, not very big, and as we can see on the map, Norynsk was really very far away from big cultural centers or towns and cities in our modern understanding. And there is very few information about the wooden synagogue, but I found that it existed exactly till 1930s. This was the period, this was a very complicated period in the history of Ukraine when cultural heritage of Ukrainians and other national communities was destroyed. Also, this was the period of the great starvation of Holodomor. So this building, I think, was finally destructed as just material for another buildings or something like this. Nevertheless, only Kirkuk or the old Jewish community today reminds about the Jewish community at all in the town. And you can see one picture from the cemetery, and this cemetery is very interesting because a lot of matzevas were saved, and they should be the very interesting object for art and historical research for other scholars. And Vitaly, I ask you to switch on the next slide. And finishing this small blog about history of the Jewish community, I would like to propose you a short information about Emanuel Shechman, famous Ukrainian and Jewish artist and theater artist, who spent a lot of time in his childhood exactly in Norynsk, in home of his grandfather. And here you can see his famous picture, The Victims of Pogrom, that now is in Kyiv in the National Art Museum. And during 1929-1932, Shechman was the head of the art department of very famous and great old Ukrainian museums of Jewish culture named after Moicher's Forum in Odessa. And turning to the outside view of the wooden synagogue that I have already shown you, I can say that maybe at the entrance of this synagogue we can see some relatives of Emanuel Shechman. Maybe this was true or not. I will try to find additional sources about this topic. And beneath, in the left corner, you can see some memories of the artist son Mark that proves that Shechman really spent some years with his grandfather who headed the school at the synagogue in Norynsk. So this is a short history of Jewish community and sources. And now I ask Vitaly to switch on the next slide to start my depiction of the wall paintings of the wooden synagogue. And here I would like to say in short that the building of the synagogue was completely built of wood. It had 2 floors and there was no any wing of a building, for example, a room for a school, etc. Pictures that we have seen show us, I think, the eastern and the western facade of the synagogue. And on pictures, we can see wall paintings on walls of the second floor. Later, you will see the part of the dome and a part of the carved beam. Polychrome drawings are displayed in fields or segments with typical elements, inscriptions in Hebrew, different legendary plants, and different legendary animals. It is very, very interesting to make assumptions about colors of these paintings, but as there are no sources, I cannot do this just now. Maybe I will find additional sources for this later. And on this picture, in the first segment, on the western wall of the synagogue, there are a temple menorah in the form of the tree, another tree, an elephant blowing a trumpet, and at the same time, you can see to the right that the elephant bringing fire to a candlestick. We can see a hand. And I should say that this image was attributed by Professor Kotlyar in 2012 in great details, and this attribution can give the base for attribution of next images that haven't been published yet. And I ask you, Vitaly, to switch on the next slide. So now you can see the second field on the second floor of the synagogue, and here you can see two lions standing on their hind legs, and their forelegs are leaning on a large basket or a vase with the tree of life. Lions have very human-like faces, which can be seen on ritual products of Polish production. And Vitaly, I ask you to switch on the next slide. And here you can compare these lions on the wall paintings in Norynsk with this Torah shield from the collection of the National Museum of History of Ukraine. And you can see that faces of these lions are very similar. And let me to quote next words. Through masks, they look with human eyes. Here we can make conclusion that the unknown author of these wall paintings used maybe ritual objects in the synagogue as models for his paintings, and I think he traveled a lot Ukraine or Poland and saw different synagogues and wall paintings. And now Vitaly, I ask you to turn to the previous slide again. Yes, the previous one, please, again. And now I would like to show you more details of this wall painting. Not Vitaly, please, next slide. Yes, and stop here for some minutes. Thank you very much. Please look below the vase and below the lions, and here you can see a fragment of a decorative element with heraldic double-headed eagle with a crown, and I think a palm branch and an etrog. You can see this fragment to the right in bigger size. It is not clear whether this is a separated decorative element or a part of the wall paintings. Nevertheless, like the top of Aron Kodesh and Bima, here the eagle symbolizes the dual nature of the world, a merciful and punishing God. And this eagle should not be identified with any coats of arms of any state where Jews live, in particular the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth or the Russian Empire. Again, according with the researches of Professor Kotlyar, this symbol has been established in the Jewish culture of the Eastern Europe since the beginning of the 18th century. And this led us to establish the period of construction of the synagogue, the beginning of the 18th century, that also is very interesting, trying to reconstruct the history of the Jewish community of Norynsk. And above the main field, we can see, I think, the main wall painting of the dome. Another double-headed eagle and inscriptions in Hebrew under its wings. And this drawings are on the background of a rich ornament of stars in the form of flower. And as you have seen, all these drawings are performed in a very simple style, and I will give you the common conclusion about this style at the end of my presentation of all wall paintings. So, Vitaly, I kindly ask you to switch on the next slide. Vitaly, please switch on the next slide. Oh, yes, next slide, please.
Next one, yeah?
Next, yes, next slide, please.
This one?
And next slide, please. No,
Tamara,
think something has happened with my internet. Do you still hear?
Yeah, we can hear you. But I guess that this is
yes. So
the last
this slide, excellent, and I hope, yes, excellent. So I hope that my internet.
I think due to unstable internet in Kyiv, so we unfortunately lost Tamara because of blackouts, electricity outages.
So Vitaly.
Oh, Tamara, good.
Vitaly, do you?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. So the participants of the conference, can you still see the last slide of my presentation?
Yes.
Yes. So, and talking about the last field, this field is fixed on pictures. We can see an unicorn and I think a symbolic ox or a ram, and they are resting on the same ways as I have said. It's very complicated to understand what an animal is exactly. To write or a ram or other animal, there are.
I guess we lost Tamara again. Okay, let's wait for a while.
I'm still with you. Do you hear me?
Yes, Tamara.
Yes, it's great. So I will try to do very quickly. So I would like to repeat again. This emote is right on the wall painting is, I think, very interesting to be identified later. It could be an ox, could be a ram, or other legendary animal, as it is performed in a very simple style, and also there are no horns on its head. And also we can see inscriptions in medallions on this field of the wall paintings.
Okay, if Tamara comes back, I would ask her to give us a conclusion and complete her presentation. Tamara.
Do you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
Tamara, we can hear you. But can we ask you to move to your conclusion?
Yes, I need only 1 minute to say that at conclusion, I'd like to say that the unknown author of these wall paintings, I think, traveled a lot Ukraine and Poland. He saw different motives.
We have no good communication.
Okay, let's move to the next presentation.
Yes. We go next. And dear Tamara, thank you very much for presentation. Unfortunately, our communication
Yes,
not
thank you
good.
very much, Professor Kotlyar. Yes, and I will be happy to communicate with all participants of the conference during debates and later via internet. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Tamara. I have one question, but it will be some later. And I ask everyone to think about the questions and discussion after all the presentations, and we continue now. And I'm pleased to invite our third speaker, Dr. Tzvi Orgad from Bar-Ilan University, Israel. Dr. Tzvi Orgad is a senior lecturer in the Department of Jewish Art at Bar-Ilan University. His PhD thesis focused on the work methods of early modern Eastern and Central European synagogue painters. His research interests are the semiotics of synagogue art, the work methods of the synagogue and Hebrew illuminated manuscript decorators, and Jewish museums. His book, Eliezer Zussman of Brody, the Early Modern Synagogue Painter, and His World, was published by Brill in 2022. The talk by Dr. Tzvi Orgad is Painted Torah Arks of Bavaria, the Gate of Heaven, or the Gateway to Ruthenia. Tzvi, this floor is yours, please.
We can't hear you, Tzvi.
Okay, so now
Thank you.
can you hear me and can you see my presentation? Okay, I think you can see it. Okay, so thank you very much, and I am very happy to be with you in this wonderful conference. And I would like to tell you today about a group of Torah Arks, painted Torah Arks. They were painted by Eliezer Zussman from Brody and his co-workers, pupils, or I don't know how to call them because we don't know their names. But this group of Torah Arks is very special because it's the only group of Torah Arks that are painted that we know about. And he used local ways to paint them individually. Every Torah Ark is different, but especially I would like to speak about the Bechofen Torah Ark that is very similar to the Torah Ark in Chodoriv. So in my presentation, I will say a few words about Eliezer Zussman, and his work in German lands. And then I will show you the Torah Arks in German lands and in Poland, and in, of course, today, Ukraine. Then I will talk about the Bechhofen synagogue in particular, and then I will discuss why these small towns of rural German lands invited a painter from Poland or from today's Ukraine to adorn their Torah arks. So I think most of you are quite familiar with Eliezer Zussman's work. Here we can see on the left the Unterlimburg Synagogue, and it's not a work by Eliezer Zussman, it's a work by one of his apprentices or co-workers, but it's one of the few that we have color photographs of course, this one and the Hope Synagogue. And I wanted to show you how much it looks alike to paintings in Eastern Europe. So Eliezer Zussman immigrated from Ukraine, Eastern Europe, to German lands. I call it Bavaria, but it's not exactly Bavaria. Unterlimburg was an imperial town, and Horb, a very small village, had houses belonging to Bavaria and others to Franconia. So I'll just call it German lands. And of course, there are a few synagogues in southeastern Germany that were painted by Eliezer Zussman and his pupils, and one of them is the Bechhofen synagogue that we see here on the right. And in this synagogue, this was the largest synagogue he painted in his new country. And interestingly, he also painted the Torah Arks. And now, when synagogue painters started their works, usually there were already Torah Arks in the synagogues. So they had to relate to the Torah Arks in the works, because the synagogue, these painters were not only painters, they were designers. They had, they wanted to create a homogeneous space. So they related also to the Torah Arks, and in German lands, they were in the bigger cities, they were Torah Arks like these ones that I show you now. These were very close to the small villages that Eliezer Zussman of Brody worked in. And this one is in Frankfurt. Okay, I'll try to, yes. You can see the Torah Ark, it's very big, it's very elaborate, and the whole synagogue is very big. And so the grandeur, the splendor of these Torah Arks, also the one in Fürth, you can see only this part of the Torah Ark, the rest is the Bima, but you can see that it's a very big and elaborate Torah Ark. And again, the splendor was derived from the materials, from the meticulous work of craftsmen, and I guess it was very expensive to build such Torah Arks, and of course such synagogues. When Eliezer Zussman came to the small villages, he didn't find such big Torah arks, but smaller Torah arks. You can see the Bechhofen's Torah ark, which is it has some decorations and wood carvings, and the Kolnberg Torah ark that has less decorations, and the Hope Torah ark or Bamain that is hardly decorated, and then the Unterlimburg Torah ark that had in its structure it doesn't have any decorations whatsoever. And this is the Kirchheim Torah ark here that is decorated by wood carvings. Its lower part is undecorated. You see that the upper part is very fine work, and the lower part is rustic carpentry. So Eliezer Zussman tried to make, for example, this part more beautiful. So we can see here a little illustration that relates to the top of the Torah ark. The Akantos lives here. Here in the Unterlippung synagogue, he tried maybe to create an image of two pillars like other synagogues had in the carpentry. So these diagonal lines of gold and silver are perhaps the Yachin and Boaz. And other synagogue, the other Torah arks in the other synagogues, the decorations Eliezer Zussman used are taken from the local art, because as we see, the small villages in German lands had a tradition of small Torah arks, like we saw in the previous slide. Yes, they are very similar with these very plain surfaces, but they had no wall paintings. In Fürth, we saw some inscriptions on the wall, but no wall paintings. So Eliezer Zussman tried to decorate these plain Torah arks using techniques he found in German lands. For example, if we see the Bechhofen Torah arks pillars, I think they were not painted. They were painted the same time the synagogue was painted, and we see that they look the same, quite the same as epitaphs in churches in the area. This one from Schwäbisch Hall, but you can see that here, for example, the leaves are carved, and in this work the leaves are painted. So in fact he tried to imitate what he saw in local churches. Here we can see again the paintings of the Kirchheim synagogue with the Torah arks carpentry also resembled local carpentry. And here we can see the paintings of the whole Torah ark, and we can see that the carpentry is very similar of domestic cupboard in German lands. We can see the same shapes, exactly the same shapes, but then I think that Eliezer Zussman added these plates, these wings, that look the same as in epitaphs. And they were not carved because, again, carving was very expensive. So he used paintings the same way that was in this area, and the same way that was in rural areas that just used paintings to replace the wood carvings. Also in Poland. Now I go back to Poland to see the kinds of Torah arks that were in the wooden synagogues. So this is the first model that we all know, that three-tier Torah ark. This one from Kwodzic is one of the first that we know, and this one from Droya from the end of or the second half of the 18th century, but they share the same principles of a monolithic Torah ark that is decorated with wood carvings, and on the top we have the double-headed eagle. So it was basically a monolithic furniture that contained the Torah ark inside. But we have a different kind of Torah ark, and this is very interesting in the Chodorev synagogue. And here we see that the Torah ark itself is very small. I believe that this was the original Torah ark before they started expanding it, and the expansion is by using several plates of carved wood, a very shallow carving. You can see it better here. So this is the Torah ark, and then they started adding these panels, one panel, and on top another panel, and here these panels. Interestingly, it wasn't enough for them, so the painters also added wall paintings and incorporated them with these carvings. So this Torah ark is basically an assemblage of different parts, very shallow parts that look alike the wall paintings around it. So we know that Eliezer Zussman came from Brody. Brody is not far from Chodorov. And as he went to his new land in German land, I guess he had a backpack, and in his backpack he had not only his painting tools, but also a book of drawings. And as I will show you, I think that he had drawings of the Chodorev Torah ark. So if we take a look at the Bechhofen Torah ark and the Chodorev Torah ark, the first thing we see that also this Torah ark is very small, like in Chodorev, and it is expanded by wall paintings. Here we don't have the carvings because I think the community was not so rich. It's not a big community, the Bechhofen community. So they wanted the same painter to paint the synagogue and the Torah ark. And like in Chodorev, we see that the Torah ark is divided to different panels. We have here this panel and this panel and this panel. Okay, so the principle is the same, and I can show you that also the Bechhofen Torah Ark is a three-tier Torah Ark. This is the first tier, like you see here in pink, the second one in green, like you see in Chodoriv, and the top one in yellow, like in Chodoriv. And also in the middle, you have this textual part. Here is the Ten Commandments, and this one is inscription. As for the paintings themselves, we can see that Eliezer Zussman used motifs from Chodoriv. For example, on top of the Torah Ark, you can see that this window is resembles the crown on top of the Torah Ark in Chodoriv, and also these two lions, or a lion and a tiger, resemble the two animals here on top of the Torah Ark in Chodoriv. In contrast to other Torah Arks, most Torah Arks we know, three-tier Torah Arks that have the double-headed eagle. Here we can see that we have the Torah crown in the middle, not on top, and also in Chodor we have it in the middle, not on top, and it's painted, it's not carved. And also I want to show you that they were very aware of the other paintings in the synagogue. For example, we can see that the shapes of the wood carvings in Chodoriv resemble the paintings on the ceiling, and the wood carving here resembles the wall paintings near this panel. So they were very aware of incorporating the Torah Ark decorations into the wall paintings. And here in the Bechhofen, it's very nice. You can see the wall paintings on the left and how the painter incorporated them with the carved decorations of the Torah Ark itself. Again, we can see here the acanthus leaves and acanthus leaves in the decorations. So this is why I claim that they were very aware of they wanted to create a homogeneous space. In the Hope Synagogue, Eliezer Zussman went one step beyond. This is a two-tier Torah Ark, but again we have the lions on top. In the original photograph, we can see that there is a border here, so we can my conclusion is that the expansion of the Torah Ark went from here to there, so this whole area was considered the expanded Torah Ark. And although it is smaller and less impressive, it is conceptually it is more elaborate, as we see that the decorations of the Torah Ark just go and form the other decorations. There are no panels here. The whole wall is painted with one scene. So this is taking a concept one step beyond. So now I would like to discuss for 2 minutes why did the small villages, small communities of rural German land, why did their Jews invite a painter from Ukraine to paint the Torah Arks. So first we saw the big Torah Arks in the towns, the neighboring towns, and of course the Jews in the small villages could not build such Torah Arks, but they wanted to beautify the mitzvah. So they would not have such empty spaces. So they invited a painter that will paint this small Torah Ark and expand it so it becomes what we see here, a very large three-tier Torah Ark. But why didn't they try to imitate the Torah Arks of their urban neighbors? I think this is also because they were not good friends with them. We see in this citation, we see that the urban Jews looked, they didn't think of the rural Jews as capable of learning the Torah, of circumcising, of performing shchita. So I think the rural Jews were offended by their neighbors, and also they didn't have rabbis, they had teachers, but the teachers studied at yeshivas that Polish rabbis taught in, so they knew they were accustomed to the Polish culture, as we can see in the inscriptions in the Bechofen Synagogue, for example, that have Eastern rite instead of the Western one. So to conclude, Eliezer Sussman from Body brought his traditions from his motherland, and as part of it, he brought the painted three-tier synagogue from there, but instead of wood carving, he used the paintings to paint the whole extension of the Torah Ark. And we can see that he also was very concerned of the homogeneous space, and this migration created one of the most wonderful Torah Arks that we recognize in early modern Ashkenazi Jews. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Orgad. Thanks a lot for your fascinating presentation. And the last presenter on our panel is Batsheva Goldman-Ida, Jerusalem Theater, Israel. Dr. Batsheva Goldman-Ida, curator at Jerusalem Theater, and an art historian and curator who specializes in Eastern European art and the connection between mysticism and art. Most recently, she has contributed a 2023 online article on Kabbalah in art and architecture for the Oxford Research Encyclopedia, a forthcoming article on Zev Rabban and symbolist biblical iconography for the Degree Encyclopedia of the Bible and its reception, and an essay on Pinchas Litvinovsky, a modernist master, for a new exhibition at the Beit Avichai in Jerusalem, which opened yesterday. Litvinovsky was born in Novogeorgievsk in the Ukraine. Her 2008 book on Hasidic art and the Kabbalah includes a chapter on the chair of Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav. The title of the presentation by Dr. Goldman-Ida is Ukrainian Jewish Wood Carving. Dear Batsheva, this floor is yours. Please. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Eugeny. Okay, let's see how I put up my screen. How do we do that? Share screen. So that's my grandchildren. Here's my slideshow. Okay, can you see it? Can everyone see the slides? Okay. All good? All right. So I would like to, instead of focusing on technique, which there are many learned people here who know more about it than perhaps I do. In any case, I would like to discuss interpretation of the materials that we are discussing at this conference. And to begin, I just would like to emphasize, as some have mentioned, the emotional experience of Jewish objects and Jewish space. And although I'm among new friends and old friends, I think it's time for us to question the basic methodology that has been promoted in the descriptions of Jewish art and artifacts, where they relate in some way to Christian art or the surrounding art. And I just want to mention first that the field of painting and the field of memoirs and personal texts are very helpful to us to get a full understanding of the Ukrainian wood carvings in the synagogue and in household objects as well. So you have here Isidor Kaufman, who painted the Gvozdyech synagogue and gives us a marvelous sense of the color polychromy of the synagogue. Isidor Kaufman was from Vienna and was instrumental in through his connection with the architectural historian Ferstel of sending Alois Breyer in 1912 to 13 to the Ukraine to investigate and document, as we know, the Galician wooden synagogues. And this collection is at the Tel Aviv Museum of Art. I just want to mention that I did a 2014 exhibition on this topic, and I created a digitalized full documentation of this collection. So all you have to do is ask, because it was online originally, but I think now you have to ask for it specifically. So I want to mention a couple of the sources that can open up to us a feeling about the synagogues. One is Elizitsky, of course, who was at the Mogliev show 1915-16. And he speaks of the color of the painting, that it's pearly amber, a kind of special feeling of black. And also importantly, the notion of time, that in other words, since there was no electric lamps in these synagogues, the play of light and shadow during the day would light up different sections of the synagogue. And another interesting source is a letter from Kazimierz Malevich to Michael Gershenson when he was in Vitebsk in 1919, and he visited a Catholic church, an Orthodox church, and the Jewish one. And he was not so, he felt isolated or put off somehow by the Catholic and Orthodox churches. But when he was in the synagogue, although he didn't understand Hebrew, he felt the force of the letters and the play of letters on the wall. And he had like some kind of an epiphany and just completely lost it, according to what he wrote. And you should keep in mind that in the wooden synagogues, the first register was always written, and the second register with the animal figures were higher up. Now, going back to the idea of wood carving, as I said, the synagogue was one place where we have the wood carvers, but they were also very busy doing other work. The well-known article by Deciphering details the kind of work that was done for dowry chests that were distributed to non-Jews. And by the way, these same carpenters were also involved in Jewish materials. So one example we have here is, this is from the Ansky collection. And we see that the mezuzah, the special place on the door for putting the prayer of Shema Yisrael, was also done in wood carving, as many other household items, even pastry molds and so forth. I just want to reiterate again, many of you are familiar, that Semyon Ansky in 1912, 1914, I guess, was mainly where he decided to do a complete ethnographic survey of the Ukrainian synagogue and Jewish areas. And this approach of trying to get a sense of the entire community is so important for us in order to fully understand the crafts and the environment. Now, my esteemed colleague, Bracha Yaniv, who gave a marvelous talk just now, wrote in an article that through the pattern books, the Jewish artisan, the articles on the wood carvers, the Jewish artisan was exposed to the latest fashions in church furniture. Okay, this I'm opening up for discussion because I absolutely do not believe that they had any kind of pattern books. They did not need pattern books. They had a whole heritage of medieval manuscripts that followed them in printed books and in manuscript books, paper cuts, textiles. They had a very rich legendary material that accompanied them. And the best person to explain this, in my opinion, was Max Weinreich, when he talked about the language of the way of the Shas, in other words, the Yiddish language itself. And he mentioned that one has to understand that the introduction of non-Jewish words into the Yiddish language was not a kind of copying or even appropriating of the indigenous culture. What he explained was that for Jews, it's not a question of the horizontal. In other words, what's happening artistically nearby or in a church or in some kind of storefront, but a vertical axis that basically goes all the way back from the Bible through early periods and finds itself expressed in art in this period, which is the 18th and 19th century. This is crucial for our understanding of how to approach Jewish craft as part of a milieu. Now, Thomas Hupka, who wrote a book on Gvozdyech, did try and do something like that. But you need quite a lot of information. And in my opinion, I always believed that Jewish art should be part of the Jewish studies department and not part of art history. It's very confusing and not helpful, because in order to fully understand the complexity of these interiors and these objects, we have to really know what it means for the community. So for example, here's the beautifully carved chair of Reb Nachman. It was originally gilt, and it's made of linden wood. It was a local Ukrainian carpenter. Actually, he was also a butcher. But it has all the different qualities that are known in Jewish wood carving. You have open wood carving, and you have a relief work. And as an object that was not part of the synagogue proper, they would often refrain from using Hebrew lettering in this case. But now if you compare this with a local paper cut, we see that our visual sources readily available to the artisan. And if we compare this paper cut, which is a Jewish paper cut, to a non-Jewish paper cut, we're in an alien world. There's no comparison. The type of geometric, and they have very interesting, of course, floral ornamentation, has no relationship to the kind of Ukrainian Jewish paper cut. Although, again, we know the Roizelich, they do have a special Shavuot, Feast of Weeks, a kind of paper cut. You could compare it, but it's not helpful to us. It's not helpful enough for us to fully understand what's going on. Even if I take the throne of Ivan IV, and I try to find somehow, some way, some connection, I find that the rigidness and more geometric forms that are based on pattern books and very particular descriptions that are provided for the artisan are very different. The Jewish ethos is more open. The figures are closer in a sense to African art. It's more, the Jewish objects are more emotive. They're anthropomorphic, as was mentioned. So I want to give you a sense of some of the earlier visual medieval precedents for the synagogue decoration, which you can see. I'm talking about Spain, 14th century. Very early medieval material, because there's a continuance on the vertical axis of content, which informs the Jewish artisan. So I want to go back a minute. In this sense, I'm combining the Polish and Lithuanian Commonwealth and joining it with the Ukraine. So here we have, this is Lithuanian folk art, folk carving. And there was one artist in Lithuania, maybe you know about him, called Aaron Fiat, who was a very excellent painter and did a synagogue decoration. And he decided at one point, he was influenced by the Lubov, which was a Russian folk kind of drawing that the Jews also were aware of and used as their own format. This is from the Ansky collection. And this Aaron Hayat decided to do a full reconstruction of the first temple of King Solomon. And he populated it with all 70 members of the Sanhedrin, the court of the temple, with figures of the high priest and Solomon himself, and the famous judgment of Solomon, where he decided between two women whose baby was truly theirs. And his source was not a horizontal axis somewhere that he had heard about, although in this period, the 19th and 20th century is very common to have dioramas of Solomon's temple that were shown from town to town. He was basing himself, this is an illustration from a book in Hebrew, so it's a contemporary, but it's according to a legend, a midrash of Esther Rabbah, the book of Esther, where it describes the throne of Solomon. And according to this, there were animals on every step, and all these animals are part of the common iconography of the synagogue. Here you see them closer, and here's the name of the particular book. And this custom, this tradition of animals on the throne of Solomon, we find as early as Dura Europos in the mid-13th century and in the medieval period. If you can look on the steps, you see these animals on the steps. So again, we have a vertical axis of tradition that they met their own kind of wood carving expression in this later period. And he was just an amazing artist, Chayat. He did beautiful reconstructions of actual architectural elements that were found in the synagogues that he was involved in or familiar with. Another tradition that was kept from the Talmud period, which is 500 CE, 500 CE was close, but it was very earlier, was the idea that there are stars on the ceiling of the synagogue. And this was found through the 20th century. I have one example in mind of Botisani, where it's also colored blue. And until today, in the Bell Synagogue in Jerusalem, the ceiling is also covered in blue. The concept was that these stars represent the fastenings of the tabernacle pillars that were holding up the tent. And this is a tradition that was a written tradition and a visual tradition that went forward through the centuries. Now, just again, mentioning that we always have to strive to get to some kind of a color impression, like Greek sculpture, that was always polychromy and was never just a naked torso. So in the synagogue as well, we need to discover what the colors are. And today, with our advanced techniques, we can determine, according to the color of gray, or sepia in this case, which colors were used. I want to go back again to this idea that art and artisanship is a two-way street. And when Frank Stella began his series, basing it on the architecture of synagogues, he gave us a lot of insight into how interesting they actually were. And even today, Jonathan Lehman is a contemporary artist in London. And he felt when he was trying to express the throne of God that he needed it to be an architectural monument. And just as Chagall expresses his own homesickness in terms of buildings from the shtetl, so we find that there are a lot of these sort of like a two-way street that you can even include in this concept of, I call it the vertical axis. And I think that it would be helpful for all of us in this field to finally put together, and maybe Bracha has just done that in her new book, but to put together a compendium of all the texts and legends and visual precedents for the works of art that we're dealing with now, and have it as an on-hand reference, because otherwise we will always be lost if we just compare the form. We need to compare the content, and that's basically it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Batsheva, for nice and fascinating presentation. And dear colleagues, now have time, not more time, but now time for an important part of our panel, some questions, comments, remarks, and discussion. Please, colleagues, join us.
I have a question now.
Yes, yes, yes,
I have
yes,
a
please.
question for Orgad. Do we know if there are any synagogues in the Ukraine that Eliezer Zussman was involved in?
Hey, it's a good
I
question.
don't know offhand. Yeah.
Yes, but unfortunately, we don't know anything about Eliezer Zussman. Apart from his signatures, there is no information about him. So, no, unfortunately.
So again, I would suggest combining forces with the historians of social history, which is so rich in that period in southern Germany. There are many excellent sources that have been, in other words, to reach farther afield and look for more possible information. So now I think.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question to Tamara Kutsaieva. I remember when I was working with the Wolf collection in this archive many years ago, I remember that there was another photograph that you did not show. I mean the view of the wall of the synagogue with the lithographic poster hanging on it with portraits of tzaddikim from the Chernobyl Hasidic dynasty. Do you think this synagogue belonged to the Hasidim, and should this have influenced the painting program? Maybe you have some ideas.
Yes, yes, yes. Dear Professor Kotlyar, thank you very much for this question. Yes, I have seen this photograph in and reading inscription on the back of this picture. I understood that this picture was from Gorodotsky City Museum. Maybe I wrong, I will check it again, but there is an inscription Gorodotsky City Museum, and I thought that this was just an addition to a trip of Wolf and not with this synagogue, because even quality of these pictures were different. Maybe I'm wrong, but if you are right, I think yes, this have an influence on painting of this synagogue to to join it with this very special Hasidic world. And I think with some time and finding additional sources, I will understand what synagogues exactly became like models for this Norynsk synagogue, because its images, first of all, an elephant that you attributed and a Capricorn are very rare for Jewish paintings in synagogues, and even they are very rare on different ritual objects products. So I think that it worth to continue this research to find more details. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Sergei Kravtsov, please. Your question or comment?
Thank you. Thank you, dear Bracha, for your very interesting, insightful lecture. I have a question. Is there one single long narrative in these motifs or subjects that you have discovered on the ceiling, or these are several narratives somehow combined? Microphone. Microphone,
please, Bracha.
Bracha, switch on your microphone. I
Okay.
cannot.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
now
yes.
you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, you ask about if there is a long story, a long narrative. Okay, first of all, you are my best colleague, and I always ask you if you know some, if you know about something, and of course you know that all the materials that we have is fragmented. We have a photograph from the eastern side of the synagogue or from the northern side. So I cannot guarantee you that what I'm telling you now is the truth. What we have is fragments. You know, that image of a coach with the people, with a driver who goes from one side of the synagogue to the other, and we have. I don't think we have one long story. We have stories. We have small, like we have seen the elephant in the previous paper from the Norynsk synagogue. We have elements which maybe it might be that once they belonged to a longer story. And as I presented the Smotrych synagogue, the 8 segments are not today, the synagogue doesn't exist, of course, but when it was painted in the middle of the 18th century, it wasn't a concise motif like we have in Yuvitz or Gvozditz or in Khodorov. In Khodorov, it is a concise motif. In Smotrych, it is not the original. It is what was left from the original motif. This is my answer to your question. I also have a question to Batsheva, or maybe to note something. I note the opinion, your opinion, and Thomas Hupka's opinion about the influence of medieval manuscripts. So I think that in the 18th century, medieval manuscripts were not the pattern book for the paintings in the synagogues. Maybe the tradition came from the Middle Ages, and it still existed in the 18th century, but as a model book, I don't believe that such manuscripts circulated in Eastern Europe. On the other hand, I can prove that the artist used pattern books, maybe not the original print, but a later a later copy, because pattern books were copied. Anyhow, in the current book, I brought examples of printed patterns which were presented in the old synagogue of Krakow. Well, we have different views. Maybe you are right, maybe I am right, but everything is okay.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you, first of all. And my feeling is something that I've been trying to work on is that 16th and 17th century manuscripts, including Evro notebooks and custom books, intercalation and custom books, and prayer books as well, and Kabbalistic manuscripts that were illustrated in those periods are the continuing line that we're looking for. So I hope I find it.
Okay. No doubt that the certain objects or animals, mainly the animals, are the same, and they present the same ideas. But if a painter needs a pattern for a tree, not a tree, for a decorative pattern, a leaf, or just another small object, he cannot find it in a manuscript from the Middle Ages. It is not under his hands. So he needs some small page that maybe he bought it from somebody who worked in a workshop, in a Christian workshop, and he can sell him a page with a pattern, and then he can use it. Okay.
Thank you, dear colleagues. We need to go to finish, and I want to say a question. Please, Dr. Reiner, Miriam, please.
Thank you, Eugeny. I have a brief question just for Tzvi Orgad. First of all, thank you for your presentation. And I just wondered, you mentioned briefly tensions between urban and rural, between rabbis and a rural population that was decorating the synagogues or not the Kodesh, as you were showing. And I was wondering whether it's only on a level of urban-rural, if it's not only east-west, because they brought the tradition that was not known at the areas where the synagogues were built and looked very different, very Eastern, maybe even Oriental. So maybe it's on that level also. I'm asking if there was a tension between the two Jewish societies, if I can call it like that.
Great. Okay, so thank you for this question. Actually, we have written sources that rabbis from the cities, they say that the Jews of the villages, they are not equipped with the knowledge, or they have the knowledge, but they can't do things like ritual slaughter and circumcising and reading the Torah, and they actually write it. So I think their problem was that the rural Jews did not follow the rabbis. They had these teachers, and the teachers were a substitute for the rabbis. And maybe the rabbis from the big cities were angry with them that they didn't follow them. I don't know. But the fact is that this is a phenomenon, and the paintings are different one, but they, if we look at them together, we see that the rural Jews did not follow the customs, the local customs, although they were, most of them were of German origins in the villages. So this makes it more unusual, peculiar.
Thank you. Interesting. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you. The last questions, please, Felicitas. Welcome.
Yeah, thank all four of you for the insights you gave us. I have one question maybe for Bracha, and one smaller comment. My question is in how far one could be able to trace parallels between, especially when we come to Smotrych, the synagogue, the themes on the walls, and the Frankist movement. Is there anything, I mean, has there been research being carried out? I'm not on track with this kind of, with this current research. This is, I think that would really interest me. I mean, it was one of the centers of Frankism, and the topic is so messianic. Mike.
Microphone, please, Bracha. Thank you. No. Microphone, please. Yes,
Okay,
yes,
okay.
it's okay.
I don't know. I cannot answer your direct question about the connection between the Frankist movement and the paintings. But since the ancient period, we have artistic expressions of waiting for the Messiah. I must tell you, when I wrote this paper, I was bothered very much with what is going today in Israel, because we have false messiahs. And, well, I don't want to get into politics, but there are people in Israel who believe that we are close to the end of days and that there must be a horrible war before it in advance, but at the end it will be wonderful, and that Daniel's vision and all the other prophecies which I brought in my paper will be realized. It is very dangerous to believe in these ideas of the end of days. So, and it happened in Jewish history that false messiahs caused horrible disasters. but there is always an expression. We can always interpret it, artistic expressions as something to wait for, to believe that one day the Messiah will come. So I cannot answer your question, but because we don't have enough, we don't have enough material. These Podolian synagogues, we have in the book that I wrote now, and I showed you the cover, I have 26 photographs from the Taranushenko collection, and they are just a small part of the other pictures in the book. When I say picture, I mean something which I can prove. Maybe. Would we have earlier synagogues existing? We could know, but I cannot answer your question.
Thank you. And the second is only a remark I have to make, because we discussed so much the representation of animals, and especially elephants, and the question of pattern books or model books or not. I would like to draw your attention to a very small house in Zurich, which was discovered not so long ago, which is called the house in Brunngasse, with Jewish wall paintings from the first half of the 14th century. And there also appear, biblical scenes, which have not been really, I think, deciphered up until now, and also animals. So it's just maybe also a topic for this evening to really try and network with latest discoveries in Europe, and also in European sites, which seem to be a bit unusual for such discoveries like Zurich. Okay,
I would like to have this. If you have a figure, I would like to have it.
Yeah, I don't. But I will go there in a few months, and I will try to make as many pictures as possible.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you all so much for a wonderful panels, exciting presentations, and lively discussion. And now we need to go to dinner.
And lunch.
Lunch. Yeah.
Lunch. Not dinner.
And I want to take Walt to Vitaly. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Yevgeny. Actually, we spent more time than expected, and we have, but we need to start the next panel in time because of Eva Froimovich, who is also involved in her, I think, medieval congress in the UK. So we have 4-minute break, and we'll restart at 2:30 East European time in 40 minutes. See you.